Hi, everyone, and welcome to Get Hired Live. I'm your host, Andrew Seaman, LinkedIn Senior News Editor for job searches and careers. I'm so happy you're joining us this week. We have a wonderful conversation planned for you. But before we get to that, I want to ask you, as I always do, to introduce yourselves in the comments. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and what you want to do with your job search and your career. We already have a bunch of people joining us in the stream who are introducing themselves. We have Patricia from Brazil, Devron from Canada, Busra from Virginia, Judy from Connecticut, Thor from Norway, Karen from Arkansas, and Mustafa from Sweden. So welcome to all of you. I'm coming to you live from Washington, D.C., so I'm actually in a different location today as well. But like I said, introduce yourselves in the comments and tell us what you want to do with your job search, what you want to do in your career. And then once you do that, start connecting with each other. If you see someone who maybe lives in your area, or maybe you see someone who is working in an industry or field that you work in or you want to work in, reach out, build those connections. Maybe you could compare notes, you can swap resumes, you can talk about career aspirations. Really, job searching and career advancement can sometimes feel like a lonely process, so it's best to have people to help you along. And it's also great to have a support system. And there's no better time to start than right now. So make sure that you're reaching out and building those connections. And today we have a really great conversation. We're going to be talking about reaching your career goals. And today my guest is Alexis Fernandez. She is a financial advisor and hiring director. Welcome, Allie.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Andrew. So excited for this awesome conversation today. And I'm
Yes.
also really excited seeing all the comments that are just flooding in from all over the place.
Yes, we have Yolanda from Texas. We have Belma from Nigeria, Mayfair from New York, Bradley from Kansas, Marcy from Los Angeles, Felicia from Florida, Tia from Atlanta, Ashley from North Carolina, Kimberly from Chicago, and many more. So welcome to all of you. And Allie,
Awesome. Hi.
hi. I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about yourself and your career, because you just
hmm
actually posted not too long ago about the risk you took in your career. And could you tell us a little bit about those?
Absolutely. So I am originally from Puerto Rico, born and raised. I left Puerto Rico when I was 17 years old in 2014 to go to Vassar College. And when I graduated in 2018, I was an English major, and I thought to myself, all right, I need to find something where I can use this English major, make an impact on my community, and really put something good out into the world. So I became an English teacher. When the pandemic hit, I realized that I was really unhappy and that I needed a big change in my life. I needed something with purpose, but also something where I was able to show my strengths in a culture that made sense. And so, speaking of those risks, I listened to the advice of a mentor who I met through my master's program. Speaking of risks, I decided to take a master's program online during a pandemic because why not, right? I met a mentor in my master's program who said to me that I would actually be excellent in financial services as a financial professional. So, Bruce, if you're out there in the audience, thank you for that. I laughed in his face and said, "Sir, I was an English major. How could I ever be good at that?" And he said, "Just listen to me. Just have a conversation." He had a connection with a partner at my current firm, and the thing about that risk, taking that leap from something, that I was familiar with, I wasn't happy, but I was familiar, I was comfortable, into a completely new field, something I hadn't studied, something completely fish out of water. It was a big risk. It was a change in my compensation, going from a salary to commission in financial services. And as I started there, I fell in love. I fell in love with the culture. I fell in love with my leadership. And while I was working in financial services, working at this firm, I worked my way up into leadership, now managing recruiting, our college internship program, and so many more aspects of, what's going on. And now I'm really, really passionate about getting more people who were like me, who have the skills, have the people orientation, have the desire to change lives, help their communities get into this field, because so many people don't know what is available in the world of financial services, especially women, especially people of color. It's something that I'm really passionate about now.
Yeah. And also, I think one of the really great things when you look at your background is that it shows that really what you get your degree in is not necessarily what you're wedded to, and you could still use
Correct.
those skills throughout
100%.
your career. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and one question that I have too is when you look back at, obviously you have a whole lot of life in front of you, but when you look back
Yes.
at how you got to where you are today, how did you chart that course? Was it intentional? Were you just
Mm.
open to things? What do you think really paved the way to get to where you are right now?
My favorite saying is when you plan, God laughs. And that is very much how I've embraced it at this point in my life. I graduated from college and I was just open. It's so funny, being here on this live. I actually started working at the school that I did right out of school because I had gotten a message on LinkedIn from a recruiter. And I said, let me just try this. Let me use my degree and see this. And every job opportunity I've had, every role that I have been in, every advancement that I've made has been the result of building a relationship, has been the result of being open to something new, learning something new. Um, and yeah, it's just a matter of being open. Obviously I had goals, but those goals were more around the impact that I wanted to make. It wasn't necessarily, I want to do exactly this, this, and this, but rather it was, I want to make a difference in my community. I want to utilize my strengths. I want to be around people. I want to be happy. I want to be flexible and utilizing those, so not necessarily specific goalposts, but rather that sense of purpose in my career was really what made the difference.
Yeah, and you talked about the risk you took throughout your career on that
Yeah,
post that I referenced
yeah,
earlier, and moving to the U.S., going to college, not really knowing anyone on
yeah.
the mainland USA, and you talk so much about those risks. Do you think that risks are important to getting ahead in your career and just getting ahead in life in general?
Oh, 100%. Risks are 100% how we can grow. I'm a big practitioner, believer in growth mindset. I believe that grit is absolutely the foundation of, how we can get to bigger and better things. I think that staying in our comfort zone, whether it comes to our personal lives, whether it comes to our careers, whether it comes to any aspect of the impact that we want to make, risks are, the starting points. And obviously, trust me, I'm in insurance. Calculated risks are incredibly important. It is not about, going completely blind, but being willing to step a little bit out, listen to advice, but also really following that sense of there's something new out there. There's something like just beyond if you just are open and try something new. The worst that can happen is that you learn. Failure is only a true failure if you choose not to learn from it. And so there's really no downside to taking calculated risks, whether it's with your career or your personal life.
I think that's such a good point. And I just want to take a moment to also say hello to people who are still joining us in the stream. We have Nanette from Louisiana, Liz from Ontario, Joshua from Indiana, Trisha from New Jersey, Bridget from
Mhm.
Georgia, Carrie from Florida, Susan from Colorado, Emmanuel from Nigeria, and Scott from New York City. So welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us. And also just a quick note, if you have to leave or something like that, this recording will still be available once we're done with the conversation. So you can just come back and watch it again if you want to catch all of Allie's wonderful tips and advice. And Allie, speaking of risk, how do risk are ways to get to a goal, and to take a calculated risk, you do need to know sort of the different parts of the equation.
100%.
And when you look at the equation, the thing that comes after the equal signs is really the goal. And
Mhm.
how do you figure out
Yeah.
what your goals should be?
Mm. Well, that's a really good question. And figuring out your goals should always come from your values. Your goals should always come from what is deeply important to you. Because if you are prioritizing things that someone has told you that you need to prioritize or things that look good, you're never going to be properly motivated enough to do the things that need to get done in order to reach that goal effectively. Goals need to come from a deep sense of purpose because ultimately that's how you motivate people and that's how you motivate yourself. You know, so many studies show that employees at, any company, any organization, if you motivate them with a sense of collective purpose, they are more effective, they are more happy, more so than any perk, more so than any benefit. It's all about feeling like they're making an impact, you are making an impact, and you are doing something that you are meant to do. So if your goals come from that place, it doesn't matter how different they are. It doesn't matter how far off and how lofty they are, because you are going to continue to work at it, and you are going to do it every day. You're going to do it with a smile, and you're going to do it with commitment. And when it comes to reaching your goals, commitment is the most important part. Grit is the most important part. Getting up and doing it every single day, even when it's hard. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is if you truly feel like you're making an impact and doing something that is meaningful.
Yeah. And I think, what you touched on is so important, because if you have a goal in mind and maybe you get up one day, and I think, the realistic part of life is that some days are better than others, and some days, work is work, and some days you enjoy work. But if you have a goal in mind, if you have a mission and you know that
Mhm,
you're working toward it, even those small steps can feel meaningful. And I
mhm,
think a lot of people sometimes they forget about that, and they see the goal and they want to just jump right there. So I think that's such a good
mhm,
point. And I do want to put out a quick call to everyone who's watching to get your questions in, because we're going to be taking them in just a little bit once I get done with my questions. So make sure you're getting those in the comments as well. And Ali, my next question is, once you figure out, okay, here's the goal I have for my career, for my
mhm,
professional life, how do you suggest you start plotting to reach those goals? Because like you said,
mhm.
you did a master's degree, you had to pivot in your career. And how do you work out in your mind, okay, I need to make this decision to go to where I want to be next?
Absolutely. So it wasn't a matter of, I'm not an extraordinarily type A person. So it wasn't, me pulling down the whiteboard and saying, all right, point A, point B, point C. But it was a matter of just being realistic and being honest with myself. What could I be happy doing? And it's creating multiple options for yourself. There's so many different paths for success. And I think what really motivated me in that moment was something needed to change. I didn't know what. I didn't know. I mean, this was, before I made that ultimate jump, but it really started from that kernel of I deserve something that makes me happy. I deserve something that makes me feel this sense of purpose. And something needs to change. And exploring that feeling, exploring it in therapy, exploring it through journaling, speaking to people that I trusted, speaking to mentors. All of that really helped me refine, what were the multiple things that needed to change. And there were multiple things. I found that simply changing the career was really just one part of a larger web of, what did I need to change in my personal life? What did I need to change in my relationships? What did I need to change in my attitudes, my day to day, how I was speaking to myself, engaging with my community. And once that becomes clear, then it is a matter of, all right, well, what can I do first? What can I do to set myself up for this next thing? What are the things that I can do in tandem that will complement each other? Trust me, I wish, like looking back, I wish it had been easy as boom, 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 but it was a much more organic process that was just day to day. It was waking up every day and saying, all right, what do I need to get done today? And how does that fit into this larger change? I have a really amazing coach here at the firm. His name is Ed Ayala. And he speaks to us often about not thinking about, all right, what do I need to do in order to get where I want to go, but who do I need to be to get where I want to go? And that kind of speaks to that more organic, larger sense of getting to my goals, both career and otherwise.
Yes, and I think, having a person that you could rely on to sort of help guide you is so important, and is not someone who's necessarily going to just give you a map and say, this is how you follow it. It's
Right.
someone who understands that you're on your own trajectory and that your
Mm-hmm.
path is going to be different from everyone else's.
Yeah.
And it's really great to have at least that sounding board and
Mhm.
someone with institutional knowledge, which it
Yes.
sounds like you have that.
In
Um,
spades.
yeah, and where they could basically say, "Hey, listen, it's great that you're doing that. Here's some background on, why that might be difficult or something like
Mm-hmm.
that." And it's almost like,
Yeah.
before you start on your journey, they say, okay, here's what you need to know about this trip you're going on. Here's how to better prepare. And it might make the journey a little bit easier. And I think that's the great value of having a mentor, especially within your company.
Mentors are everything. Mentors, coaches, advisors. Really, I wouldn't be anywhere if I hadn't had people in my corner who I could trust and who were guiding me, allowing me to do what I needed to do and discover what I needed to discover. But, I always rely on expert advice, whether it's calling up my dad or my mom, or calling up a coach, or calling up a teacher. I'm very lucky to have had the support of those relationships. And that's why I think I'm very happy in an advisor role, working with clients, because I know the importance and the gravity of that position in people's lives. I know how important that is.
Yeah. And I wanted to go back to the idea of a calculated risk.
Mm.
In LinkedIn, we talk a lot about intelligent risk.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's along the same line. And when you start looking at risk and you say, okay, I have a few options in front of me. Maybe they're all a little bit risky. There are some that
Yes.
will work out. There are some that won't. How do you know which one to take, and how do you actually calculate that risk and say, okay, I still might fail, but the odds are pretty good that I won't?
Absolutely. So I'll just use the example from my own career transition. So jumping into financial services from a career as an English teacher sounds like an out of the blue crazy risk. But as I was making that transition, what was going on behind the scenes was, first, again, I had someone that I trusted say, Allie, you have the temperament to do this. You have the desire, you have the skills that could potentially make you successful. There's no guarantee, but you absolutely have the personality and the skill set that you could be successful. I was taking, different personality profiles, quizzes. I was speaking to people. I messaged and connected with tons of people in the financial services industry while I was making that decision, having those conversations. I was definitely speaking to people that I loved and trusted. I was really doing a lot of inner work. And ultimately, yes, it was a risk, but like you said, it was that sense of intelligent risk. It was, all right, I could fail. It is a very entrepreneurial field. It is very sink or swim. It is very, there is, a bottom here, but there is also this opportunity. And ultimately, I had to ask myself, looking back on my life, knowing what I know, having spoken to the people that I've spoken with, having listened to the people that I did, having done all of that inner work, will I be happier knowing that I stayed in this stable position where I'm unhappy and didn't fail? Or would I be okay trying for this career that sounded exactly like how I wanted, exactly the kind of impact that I wanted to have, and failing, but learning? And so ultimately that's how I made that decision. And I think that that combination of inner work, speaking to people that you trust, and doing research and asking yourself those hard questions, asking yourself, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, what will I be more satisfied with? That's how you take those risks when it comes to your career.
Yeah, and I think I see in the questions that John is asking, how do you assess the risk of a career move? And
Mhm.
I think you may have
Yeah.
just helped him with that. So,
No, absolutely. And I'll admit that I was very lucky. I didn't have children. I didn't have a spouse. You know, I did not have, a lot of those complicating factors that really introduce, that really make those kinds of risks and decisions harder. I had that freedom as a single person. But when you are making those decisions, you have to weigh. And I recognize that I definitely had a bit of privilege in that situation where I was able to take a risk of that gravity. And those were the questions that I was able to ask myself. But there is always space to grow.
yeah. And another question that I have for you is that you talk to a lot of professionals who want to make a change and do things, with their career that maybe they're a little bit worried about. And when people are talking about their professional lives with you, what do you think is the biggest misstep that they take? Because I know a lot of times, as someone who works in the job search and career coaching and advice space and news, people will often talk to me about what they're doing, and sometimes I go, I'm not sure about that thing. What is that for you? What do you sort of pick up on when people talk to you about their careers?
So when people are talking to me about their careers, when people are talking to me about, oh, this is what I want, I'm very much listening for this sense of I want it because this is how it looks versus I want it because this is what I want to do. And going back to my coach, when I think a lot about, what I'm doing versus who I'm being, I hesitate when I'm speaking to people and they tell me like, "Oh, I want to do X thing. I want to do X thing. This is what my day to day should look like and this is how it should look. This is the title that I want people to see. This is, the outward appearance that I want to give and this is what I want to do day to day." What we do day to day is not truly what makes up our career. It is how we are making that impact. It is how we are building our skills, our knowledge base, etc. And that's really what we need to lean on. We really need to lean on our sense of purpose, our sense of impact, and think bigger. And because what I find is I did that when I became a teacher. I said, all right, I have an English degree. I know how to write. I know how to read. Because of those skill sets that I have, and because of this title that I have as, someone with a degree in English, I need to go be an English teacher because I know I can do those things. I was doing the things I was trained to do, but I was not happy and I was not being the person that I wanted to be. I made a radical transition into something that I had not studied, was not something that I ever envisioned myself telling people that I was doing, but I was being the person that I wanted to be. And funny enough, the things that helped my career, specifically posting on LinkedIn, connecting with others on LinkedIn, I was still able to use my skills. I write every day, and those relationships that I build really do stem still from that education, just in a completely different way. So that's really what I listen for. I just tell them, think some more, think more, understand that it's you who has to go through this process and it's not necessarily going to be the same. You're not going to want to do the same things the rest of your life.
Yeah, I think those are really great pieces of advice. And then I want to make sure we get to all the questions that we've been getting.
Yes.
But one of the last things I want to ask you is just, for people who are listening to this conversation today, what's one thing that you suggest they do to really take control of their careers or start themselves on the path that they want? Is there something that you do every day in your routine that you could share? Or is there just something that you think is a really good practice for people to do?
Build relationships, connect with people, make friends, speak to people, go to networking events, go virtual, in person, I don't care, go to them, meet people, ask people for introductions, build up your people don't even use Rolodexes anymore. I don't even know why I'm using that because I don't have a Rolodex. But building up that connection list and adding value and learning from others, because you never know when an opportunity is going to come. Every opportunity I've had that has made a positive impact on my life has come from a relationship. It has either come from someone who saw what I was posting, someone who knew someone I knew, someone who was a mentor that I had reached out to. Only positive things can come from building relationships. And again, I say this as someone who, struggles with anxiety and things like that. I know that it is sometimes difficult to just put that first foot out there. But Andrew, you said habits. That is a habit I have had to form, a muscle I have had to flex every single day, where that is an integral part of my workday. It is going on LinkedIn. It is making phone calls. It is going out and finding opportunities to meet like-minded people I can help, and people who can help me. That is the single biggest thing a person can do when it comes to building their career.
No, I think that's such a good idea. And especially even just sort of keeping the relationships you have fresh is also just such a great idea. And a lot of times if I'm sort of in the middle of my day and I think, oh, I haven't talked to this person in a while or I haven't heard from them, I'll just send them an email and say, hey, today it struck me. I remember the time we did this. I just wanted to say hi. You don't even have to respond. Just wanted to say, hey. And, it's just something where someone it brightens up their day. Imagine all the emails they get about stupid things that, is, burying them with work, and then they just see
Mhm.
something that's a little bit different.
It's
And
happy.
it's so
Yeah.
nice. Exactly.
And that's
And
making impact. That's making
yeah,
impact.
and and I think this leads into the first question we have from a member in the audience, and it's from Diane. And Diane says,
Hi, Diane.
I'm moving to Washington State in a few months to reopen my business, but I have no
Oh,
contacts
congratulations.
out there. What's your advice for networking in a new place?
The internet is a beautiful place. I absolutely would recommend going on Facebook, LinkedIn, joining groups. Also, yeah, honestly, LinkedIn is such a great and powerful resource. Trying to find people in that local area. I really love using sites like Eventbrite, Meetup, etc. Now, depending on your comfort level, of course, with the pandemic and seeing people live, there are so many options now when it comes to either professional networking. And you do not have to spend tons and tons of money to network. I know people who do, and they're successful at it, and they're in the Chamber of Commerce, et cetera, et cetera. You do not need to spend hundreds of dollars a month on a fancy professional networking group if you are willing to put yourself out there, join groups, go in places where you're going to meet people. And again, I know it, especially starting from scratch, but that's why the internet is so helpful, because you're able to set things up, you're able to join groups and kind of start small before you're actually going out and meeting people. But yeah, I would just recommend joining groups, and not just groups related to professional networking, because sometimes those can be duds as well, but joining groups related to your hobbies. Forget business. All the best business conversations I've had did not start talking about business. They started talking about cooking, talking about my cats, talking about everything under the sun except business. And then it naturally evolves. So you don't have to think, all right, I need to go make professional contacts right now. Go make friends. Go make friends, join groups that have to do with your hobbies, start small online, depending on your comfort level, get out there. There's just so many options now.
Yeah, I love talking about cats, so that's a great
Me
conversation starter
too.
with me. In
I,
fact,
I never shut up about my cats. I love them.
yeah,
They're amazing. I'm
right.
going to show everyone a picture. No, all right, no.
One of my proudest
Okay.
moments was I was in a long cab ride, and by the time I got to my location, I had convinced the cab driver to get a cat for his children. And he sort of was like, "I'm going to go
There
home and
you
do this.
go.
This is a great idea." And I'm like, "Yeah,
There you
you
go. I hope
should."
you got his
Yeah,
contact information so
I,
he can send you pictures.
yeah, and
Like
I
that's
actually,
the trick. You can go out and meet people, but you need to get their phone number too.
yeah, I actually told him to get two cats, so I hope he's out there enjoying two cats
That's
somewhere.
important.
Yeah.
They need to have a friend.
Exactly. And we have two questions here that I think we can combine. And the first one, it comes from Dennis, who says, "I'm looking to pivot my career after 10 years in the same industry. What advice do you have for
Mm.
breaking into a new space where you don't have experience?" And then Leslie asked, "Did you transition into your new field with volunteer opportunities? Because some people do that."
That is I'm gonna go with the first question. In terms of transitioning, again, building relationships is one of the biggest things you can do. One thing that I really leaned on as I was making my career transition was creating my own experience. And by that I mean leaning very heavily on transferable skills, saying, all right, what did I do as a teacher? And what would I be expected to do in this role? In both roles, I was expected to communicate very clearly, often, and on time with families, with individuals. I was expected to help people reach goals. I was expected to maintain order in my classroom. I was expected to build relationships, assess needs. Those are the same things I do in my current role. And so when you're looking to make those transitions, really leaning on transferable skills and really thinking, all right, well, what can I do in this space right now that would line up with what I know I am capable of? And in terms of the second question, Andrew, can you remind me of the second question I got? Ooh,
Yep.
yeah.
From Leslie
I'm
about
sorry.
volunteer opportunities. Did you
Yes.
use those in your career transition?
So no, in my career transition, I was, straight from this role to this role. However, I do recognize that, volunteer opportunities are something that have been made available. Again, I think of, you know, community service. Um, but one thing that I would caution about volunteer opportunities and things like that, most companies should afford to pay you. I would be very cautious about being expected to give free labor away with the hopes of potentially breaking into a new field. I think a much better use of one's time outside of volunteer opportunities is, again, networking, building up your education, building relationships with people where you want to be. I think that is a much stronger, again, resume builder, but also just a better use of your time that's going to make you feel more fulfilled. And again, you're not giving away free labor. I don't think anyone should do that in 2022.
Yeah, definitely.
In a professional context, obviously community service, that's a different thing, but in a professional context.
And I think there's some things where, some people, maybe they might volunteer, especially in the financial industries, church group or something like that, where you take care of their books and things like that. But if it's, if you're working full time in a volunteer position, you should probably maybe get paid for that or something like that. And we also have some cat lovers in the comments, Elizabeth and Leslie. So
all of you are very welcome to connect with me and send me your cat pictures. It'll make my day.
There you go. And then, we have a question here too, and it's from Caroline. How do I market myself for a career pivot without a master's degree? And you pivoted before you actually got your master's degree,
Yes,
right?
I was midway through my degree. So I was managing a career transition. I was getting a master's degree, a global pandemic, a move. It was nuts. No, you do not need a master's degree. And frankly, I didn't need my master's degree. I hate to say it, but my master's degree was valuable for the same reason my undergrad was valuable, in that I was able to build really strong relationships. I was able to network within the institution. I was able to meet people who truly impacted my life. But no, you do not need a master's degree. Again, at this point, there are very, very few fields that actually require, like if you want to go in academia, yeah, you need a master's degree. you need that advanced documentation. But outside of academia, again, I sound like a broken record, but relationships and projects and lived experience are just as valuable. And I'm so happy that I got my degree. It was a lifelong goal of mine, and it made me feel really good. But it is absolutely not necessary. In fact, it could potentially take time and funds. You also have to, I wouldn't be a proper, financial professional if I wasn't also including that aspect. You really have to weigh the costs and benefits, and the costs and benefits are very different now in 2022 than they were even 10 years ago when it comes to higher education.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times what I always suggest to people, especially if they're weighing the idea of whether they should go to school for a higher degree or something, but they're also on track and things like that. I always tell them, Google some of the CEOs who are out there and whether they have degrees or not. And you'll find actually quite a few people who have become CEOs or C-suite executives without even a bachelor's degree. And it's obviously much harder. And they've definitely relied on, like you said, relationships and networking and just learning the skills the hard way. So, anything is possible. It's just there's not ever one single route to where you need to get to. Unless you're a doctor, you should probably go to school for that.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Lawyer, doctor, and that's the thing with a lot of fields too. There's special certifications. Like for me, like I needed to pass insurance licensing. I need to pass investment licensing. I need to get, I need to pass certain tests. Professional designations. Yes, absolutely. If you want to be a product manager, go ahead and get your PMP. Go ahead and get that professional designation. It doesn't need to be a traditional master's degree at a university.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, we have a great question here to end on. And I think, you could speak to this as someone, who's not too far removed from college, and then also as someone who has their master's degree. What do you recommend? And this is from Noor. What do you recommend for new grads navigating the job market?
Breathe. It's hard. You're not crazy. It is difficult. It is difficult. Even people said it should be. I would say lean on your alumni networks. I am very active in my Vassar alum network, and we're always looking for people to want to engage with those communities. And I think that's, if not the most, definitely one of the most valuable parts of going to college in the first place, is just really leaning on those alumni networks. Not being afraid to start in something that is not in line with your degree. There's so many successful people who started off their careers in completely different places, and you're not a failure if you're not able to use your degree, and you're not a failure if you are not getting that super fancy consultant gig right out of school. It is a very different world than people were graduating into 10, 20, 30 years ago. I would highly, highly, highly recommend building up your professional social media. So again, LinkedIn, like building a professional LinkedIn, connecting with others. Again, that goes into also connecting with your alumni networks. That is very important. More people are looking at LinkedIn's than they're looking at resumes, especially for younger people in these entry-level positions. It really can set you apart. Really focusing on creating a professional brand for yourself. And again, we're Gen Z. We're good at that. Really leaning into what we can do in a unique way that doesn't cost us a lot of money is so, so important. Learning how
Yeah.
to tell your story. Huge.
No, I think that's so important. And telling your story is such a great way to put yourself out there and say, hey, listen,
Exactly.
here I am, here's who I am. And you get to see your progression over time. And
Yes, it's incredible.
yeah, it's so fantastic. And, for people out there who are thinking, I'm new to this. How do I get ahead? You don't have to start as a CEO. You don't have to start
No.
in the C-suite. In fact, you're not going to, most likely.
And also,
However,
like, just the side point, the person in your class who you were comparing yourself to, who got that $300,000 consultant gig right out of school, or that investment banker making tons of money, probably miserable. They're 19 years old and they are miserable. So you do not have to, that's not necessary for your success or your happiness, for sure.
yeah. And I usually tell people life is long, so pace yourself.
Huge.
Yes. And well, thank you so much, Ali, for joining us.
Of
I really
course.
enjoyed this conversation.
Me
I hope
too.
everyone is following you. We've been flashing your LinkedIn profile
Yeah.
at the bottom of the screen. And,
Love it.
for everyone watching, I really hope that they'll share this episode and tell us a little bit about what they learned today, maybe something they took away from it, and also just tag us in it. We'd love to see what you thought of today's show and also what you took away from the conversation.
Absolutely. Looking
Great.
forward to connecting with all of you.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Ali. And thank you all for joining us. And if you missed any of today's show, I saw Susan, you said you dropped off for a few minutes. Don't worry. The show is completely archived. Once we're done, you hit refresh and you can watch it all again and get all of Ali's wonderful tips. But don't worry, we have more tips on the way too. In fact, on Monday, my colleague Nina Melendez will be talking with someone about making better decisions. And the stakes are sometimes really high. That's Monday, April 25th. She'll be joined by author and professor Dan Ariely to discuss the key to decision making and how to make better choices. Again, that's Monday, April 25th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time from the LinkedIn news page, which is where you're watching this show from, whether you know it or not. And you don't want to miss that. Dan Ariely has a great LinkedIn learning course, and he's world renowned for his courses. So you're going to really want to tune in for that. And then I'll be off on hiatus for a couple weeks. I have a meeting, and LinkedIn is giving us a wonderful Friday off. However, don't worry, we will be back Friday, May 13th, Friday the 13th. What better time to have a show? So tune in May 13th. We're going to be talking all about working in a new country, finding work in a new country. Sometimes that could be a little challenging, but we're going to be talking to someone who's done that and helped others do that. His name's Shodawan. He's a career coach and founder of WorkHap, and that's May 13th at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. My producer should be dropping the link into the comments below. But if you miss it, you could also go back to this post a little bit later and RSVP there. And again, you're not going to want to miss that. It's going to be a great conversation. And Sho was actually a LinkedIn top voice a couple years ago. So thank you so much for tuning in. It's always great to have you as part of these conversations, and I really appreciate the time. And I appreciate the people who make the show possible behind the scenes. We have Elias, we have Derek, we have Gianna, we have Dave, and we have a whole army putting the show together for you. And I can't be more grateful for all of them. So thank you so much for your time. And remember, you need to take care of yourself, because you can't get a job, you can't be a good candidate unless you're safe and well enough to do so. So until next time, best of luck.